Good morning, maybe afternoon for some of you. Welcome to Maximizing Industry Potential with Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. My name is Brian Tucker. I'm with the University of Alabama in Huntsville. We are the lead organization for the Alabama Defense Advanced Manufacturing community. And certainly, thank you for being here. We appreciate our panelists today, Lauren Lerman with MXD and Josh Kramer with America Makes, who you see on the screen there. I'm going to go through a couple of housekeeping items real quick, just navigating through GoToWebinar. First of all, I know they're all different, but you should have a control panel for GoToWebinar. You can click on the audio dropdown and adjust your audio settings there. Then there's also, right now, everyone's kind of muted as they've joined. We'll see how many people join in. If it is a pretty small group, we can do maybe raise hand, answer questions. But starting off, there's a question drop down. So if as the presenters are presenting, if you have a question, type that in. We're going to have some built-in Q&A time. I mean, if something comes in and it's really pertinent and it makes sense to ask the question at the time, I'll certainly jump in and do that. But you have an opportunity to do that through the drop-down questions to start off with. Also, there's a handout section. We've got some of the slides that we're presenting today are available. If there's more that you want, just let us know. We can see if we can get you some versions of those. But a couple of the presentations, this one that you're looking at and the one for MXD is available for you to download. If for some reason you have a problem doing that regarding, getting blocked in your firewalls or anything like that, you can contact us through our website, 8amc.tech, or you can email me directly. That's my email address, and it's also at the end of this. But the 8amd.tech is probably the easiest way. Just go to the Contact Us page. So I do want to spend just a few seconds on ADMC and kind of how we got here. First of all, who we are. It's a large group of different types of organizations that recognize the need for the advancement, I guess the acceleration of advanced manufacturing as it relates to the workforce and the technologies themselves. Obviously, we're here as a defense manufacturing community, and that's because of a grant through the Office for Local Defense Community and Cooperation, or OLDCC, which we think has the longest, the credit for the longest acronym in the DoD probably. But we certainly appreciate the partnership we have with them. Our office has worked with them for several years on industrial-based activities. There's a long list on this eye chart here of a lot of organizations that are involved in ADMC. The stars in our logo represent the ADMC region, which is 22 counties in the state, and it's driven by the presence of the DoD installations, the concentration of the DoD industrial base, and the organizations, founding and organizations that have been involved in advanced manufacturing and workforce development around advanced manufacturing that kind of came together to form the consortium and the support organizations. In the middle there, you see the DoD Manufacturing Institutes that we've been partnering with a lot at various levels. And of course, we had two of those present yesterday, ARM and NextFlex, and then we've got America Makes and MXD presenting today. And we appreciate the work that they do in this arena and their partnership with us regionally and on national initiatives as well. So what is it we're trying to accomplish at ADMC? We are certainly looking for a workforce or industry rather, starting off with, that is knowledgeable of these advanced manufacturing technologies and progressively adopting them. To do that, you've got to have that advanced manufacturing workforce that is skilled, that is employed, and a pipeline that is growing and sees advanced manufacturing as a preferred career path. And then finally, advanced manufacturing technologies that are developed or augmented to address the challenges, especially those related to national security and other national interests. So how do we do that? We've got three thrust areas that we're focused on, and these are probably consistent with a lot of your own personal initiatives. But workforce development, again, talked a little bit about that in our vision statement. Technology adoption, helping companies through education and support and adopting the technologies, and then technology development, again, where we're focused on implementing or applying technologies to solve challenges. And as we started moving out in these thrust areas and reached out to industry specifically and other partners, some of the feedback we got was around these goal areas of our strategy. We need to be present. We needed to be with industry as much as possible, go to them so they don't have to travel. You see the region that we have covers a good bit of the state. So get to the industry as much as we can, but also recognizing that where we can't, provide webinars and things like this that they can participate in. Perception is, again, recognizing that manufacturing is not dark, dirty, and dangerous, and can be a preferred career, and there's a lot of opportunities and benefits in manufacturing. And it's not just people that are in that pipeline from a workforce standpoint or an education career pathway, but also those people around them, educators, their family members, those people that provide support to them, and that perception it needs to be presented broadly to everybody in the community. And then finally, promotion. And this is more around certainly promoting manufacturing, but also promoting the resources that are available, which kind of gets us to where we are today, is recognizing that there's these DoD manufacturing innovation institutes that are doing a lot of stuff on a national level and can be a benefit, huge benefit to industry. And we wanted to make that known to them. So that's how we sort of ended up where we are today, is making sure that industries in the region, and of course, this is not just limited to the ADMC region as far as participation, but making sure that industry recognizes the value and the benefit of what these innovation institutes can provide. And so like I said, we had NextFlex and ARM present yesterday. If you're interested in those, you weren't able to attend, these webinars are being recorded, and we can get you a recording if you want to reach out to us to get that. But today we've got America Makes and MXD. So I am going to go ahead and hand it over to, first of all, we're going to have Josh Kramer with America Makes speak. And I'm going to hand it over to Josh. And while I'm doing that, I will introduce him. Let me navigate here just a second. So Josh is the Director of Education and Workforce Development with America Makes. And in that role, he provides overall program leadership responsibility for all America Makes education workforce initiatives. And this year, he has been promoted to director across the NCDMM organization, including America Makes. Josh has been instrumental in developing a strategy that has grown the education and workforce development program portfolio and overall brand identity. And due to his extensive background in education, workforce development, and program, he's been a catalyst for several EWD initiatives that have been utilized or modeled across the country. So with his 20 years experience, Josh previously served as Director of Education Programs at the SME Education Foundation, monitoring, promoting, and evaluating all major programs. During this time with the foundation, he also served as the Interim Executive Director. He was responsible for actively collaborating with manufacturing partners to assess the knowledge and skill set needed to establish strategic plans while building programs to meet the skills gap needs of manufacturers. He also spent time with Project Lead the Way. Many of you may have heard of that program. It's a national nonprofit focused on STEM, biomedical, and pre-engineering program in the K-12 sector. And beginning his professional journey as an educator in applied engineering in the K-12 sector, he brings real world applicable knowledge in education realm, critical to supporting educators. He holds a master's in education and a bachelor's in science in education from California University of Pennsylvania. So appreciate Josh being here, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brian, and certainly appreciate the introduction as well. We're honored to join and have been proud partners and supporters of all the work down there that's ongoing. And so I'm going to actually share my screen. So at any point, if you can, or at least someone give me a thumbs up that you see everything well and you can hear me okay.
Looks good.
All right, great.
It sounds good.
Perfect. And I'm going to skip through a couple of these. As Brian mentioned, I mean, feel free to utilize any of the functions on questions and chats and all that kind of stuff. Jot some notes down. We'll certainly have some time to chat through this. But I wanted to talk a little bit about America Makes and the Institute, our work, how that dovetails into some of your work. in the region, and how we can really, candidly be a partner in some of these ventures as well. So for those that don't know America Makes was the first innovation institute, stood up back in 2012. We were the flagship institute of what now is 17 of the manufacturing institutes, 9 of which are Department of Defense funded as well. We are a Department of Defense supported institute under a public-private partnership as well. We are focused on 3 big thrust areas: development, maturation, deployment of the technology itself around 3D printing and additive manufacturing. The second thrust area is all around what we would call ecosystem. So, we are a membership-based organization that is also in this public-private partnership of the public entities as well as the private entities of membership, about 250 members, a number of which are, on probably today, or obviously part of this group as well. And then the last thrust area that we really focus on is around human capital development, and that's the portfolio that I oversee here at the Institute as the Director of Education Workforce Development. And so you can see, obviously, we're supporting that through operations and different technology platforms, communication, all that kind of stuff. But that's America Makes in its big sense. When we focus a little bit more on education and workforce development in our portfolio, we impact about 10,000 learners each year through a number of activities that kind of follow in these big 5 buckets. So thought leadership being one of those, and that's really being good stewards. And we'll talk a little bit about some stats and learnings and different things that we find around the skills gap and the awareness gap in advanced manufacturing, focused really on the additive manufacturing sector. We do maintain what we call an EWD, Education Workforce Development Roadmap and Inventory. So we do look at and heat map the industry. So we look at gaps and trends and understanding where we're weak and where we're oversaturated and where to focus and all that kind of thing. So we're very much, ear to the road on what's going on and coming down the track as well. We also focus on what we call industry recognized credentials as well as apprenticeship framework. So one of the key functions of the Institute is all around competencies and bodies of knowledge and those kind of things. So we do maintain what we call the body of knowledge. We do that with our industry partners and a number of other workforce development organizations. And that body of knowledge becomes the root or the foundation of a lot of, if not all of the programs, but looking at where these gaps may be around industry recognized credentials and the frameworks and the blueprints that involve and being able to bring industry voice to that conversation, as well as academia, so that we can make sure that these things can be deployed successfully. And that includes things like apprenticeship framework. So yes, we have an apprenticeship pathway, and we have a number of those programs that go from state to federal programs that are approved by DOL and state departments as well. Same thing with industry recognized credentials. We do look at that as a pathway. We'll talk a little bit about that, but looking at micro badges to industry recognized credentials in high schools, into community colleges, university, for adults, incumbent training, mainstream adults, all that kind of stuff. So we very much look at that, and we'll talk a little bit about our roadmap to impact here in a little bit. Educational outreach for us is what we would call our K to Gray strategy. So very focused on ensuring that we can meet every learner where they learn, how they learn. That's very critical to our kind of vision or mission in the education portfolio. So a lot of that is focused on if you're 14 or 40 and no one's ever introduced you to the manufacturing industry, no one's ever introduced you, and you don't know what you don't know. And so we do have a large emphasis to widen the funnel, and we'll talk through some of the data points and different things as we go through today, a couple slides, and why that's important, because in some regions we just don't have enough humans to tackle the gap, and in other regions we're up against some other markets as well. And so the last big box there is some tailored AM training. And so when we're developing to new requirements, or we're developing a new training asset that fills a gap in the industry, a lot of times we're working to deploy that and partner to scale that. We really work on what we call national strategy through local impact. So a lot of these things that you'll hear me talk about today are all focused on how do we set up a national strategy and then work with local partners to deploy in their local community. And so that collaboration is really key to growing impact and sustainability as well. So this is a you know, an image that we all have seen in the realm, right? We're up against this 2.2 million you know, million position skills gap in the industry, right? Whether it be truly we don't have enough talent or we have a talent mismatch across these, it's important to know kind of what we're up against. Now, when we zero in a little bit, as far as you know, manufacturing USA goes, or additive manufacturing specifically, right? We're starting with this, you know, advanced manufacturing, and then we're zooming down into additive, which is our focus. And so some of the things I want to talk a little bit about is, you know, we're going to kind of zoom into a couple very specific things and some interesting data points from our perspective. And so we have a number of projects and activities that really focus on looking at some of this data, that kind of mine this data very actively as well. And so we know that, you know, over 3/4 of manufacturers continue to have problems finding talent. I don't think I'm telling anyone that. I very much believe talent is a local problem, though. And so every region or every local entity, you know, in a city, a borough, a township, you know, their problem locally is you know, one that we have to combat in different ways, depending on if you're urban, rural, suburban, whatever that may be. But we know that by and large, the trend is, you know, the majority is struggling to find talent. When we look at probably the widest gap, it's in that technical technician workforce. The average age is 45 years old. We know that 3/4 of those are male. So it's a male-dominated, middle-age workforce that we have currently in that technical workforce side. You know, one of the other things that we really focus on a lot, you know, is we know that students are deciding whether they like science or math in 2nd or 3rd grade, right? And these are young boys and girls that are figuring out, hey, you know, we either like math or we don't like math. We either like science or don't. We know that all of these jobs require a background in STEM education. And so one of the biggest predictors and hurdles to achievement in STEM education is poverty. You know, about 30% of students in the United States are affected by poverty, which, you know, negatively affects their access to and achievement into STEM education. And so it's important that we try to get programs into students, lower those hurdles and obstacles so that we can provide quality program that's rigorous and tied back to some of these things. Another one is diversity specifically. So when we look at, you know, manufacturing predominantly a heavy male industry, about 80%, depending on where the values are, you know, sometimes 75%. But when we look into some specific sectors, so we'll talk a little bit about technicians and engineers today as well. But when we look specifically in the engineering sector, predominantly white male, when we look including females and those of color, you know, Black, Native American, for example, it's a great opportunity for us to raise numbers in that engineering sector that can contribute back to the shortfall that we have in the skills gap. Another one that's near and dear to our heart is this DoD enterprise solution of that. And this is looking beyond active duty and looking at over 800,000 active reservists in the US, and many of them are underemployed, meaning they have skill sets they actually could obtain more and in a higher salary, you know, more job opportunity. But whether it's a link to those opportunities, you know, some tailored training to gain some skill set or whatever that may be. So focused in on a couple of those things we'll talk about a little bit. The growth of the AM workforce, we really look at specifically the growth of additive manufacturing. Obviously, manufacturing in general continues to grow. When we look at that top line, the light blue line, you'll see additive manufacturing is growing at a faster rate, which also means that we need a workforce that can backfill that growth, right? The technology only gets us so far before we need a workforce that understands how to utilize the tools or develop business cases, you know, and solutions to these things. And so it's very interesting that, you know, when we look at some of the large workforce data and how does that start to boil down into additive manufacturing, we know that when we talk to our members, you know, over half of our members are still struggling to you know, to find a workforce. And of those 50%, you know, that half of the, you know, that same number is still, they have job openings. And a lot of times these are not, we're looking for 1 or 2 people. We have a couple members that are looking for dozens of people. And so it continues to be a problem across our industry as well. And when we look at the top 15 companies that need a skilled workforce, when we look at data across all of advanced manufacturing, 12 of which are America Makes members. So I think there's an opportunity. We're kind of seeing these things, stars align on some of the need side of this. And so one of the things that I always like to talk about is it's not saying that we don't have training programs and we don't have great academic programs and we're not graduating students that are capable. All of those things are happening. Absolutely. The problem is we have a hole in the bucket. So when we look at this, we're pouring water into the bucket and the hole's in the bottom, right? So as fast as we pour water in, it's going out of the bottom. And so as fast as we can place, new talent into the additive manufacturing industry, we're having 3 more job posts that are added. So when we look at sustainability over the last 14 months, we're averaging 2,700 openings a month, and they're not going down. They fluctuate slightly, by tens, not thousands, not hundreds. And so when we look at that kind of sustained gap over time, it's because, when we transition one person to the workforce, we're just getting this kind of massive filling of open job roles. So I think that's, again, following the trend of as fast as people can adopt, as fast as we can get a workforce in, they're just kind of absorbing all of that capability with us. We know when we look not only at direct additive manufacturing job functions, but when we look at some of the support functions as well, we know our gap to be about 50,000 short. That's where we're at as an industry around the US, or where, our best guess would be in that. We know that over 50% of that is entry level. These are great paying positions that are entry level positions with some training, certification, apprenticeship type of roles. And these range anywhere from $45,000 to $80,000 a year, most of which are in the $60,000 to $80,000 range. So these are good paying jobs in the industry as well. We also see a pretty big trend on growth areas. So yes, the West Coast has a pretty large allocation. You'll see specifically here, and I think it's important to point out that we do see Alabama and Tennessee up through Ohio and PA is a very demanded region of openings in additive manufacturing as well. And I'm sure there's many folks probably nodding along going, yeah, we can't find anybody here in the region as well. And so I think that's an important piece. We're seeing data that correlates with that as well. And I mean, some of the key competencies that we look at, obviously DFAM, design for additive, being one, qualification certification as materials become, specialized. Maintenance operations, many companies, organizations now have more than one printer. They have many printers, and so maintenance operations on those are important. We're also seeing a big push on could versus should. So what's the business case for AM? How do I print a part that makes me money? How do I fit that, additive manufacturing process in our core manufacturing processes, and those kind of things as well. And it's no secret that workplace competency, problem solving, creativity, communication, lifelong learning, creativity, it's no secret there, right? That's all the agile nature of the technology as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what we call our roadmap to impact. So when we kind of transition to, we kind of see this problem, we have our hands on this problem, but how do we then react to it? And how do we provide an opportunity, again, through this national strategy, local impact, to kind of scale solutions and do that with partners locally? Because that's the only way, candidly, that we're going to be successful, is to scale these programs through local partnerships. And so we really look at this as a holistic pathway. So it goes from building awareness to creating inspiration, from that creation of inspiration to, looking at kind of the super highway and saying, hey, we have 8 lanes, which lane do you want to be in? And so I think for many people, when they look at the advanced manufacturing realm, they think I could be a technician or an engineer. That's the only 2 things they ever see, not realizing that even in the additive process, there's those 8 lanes, and which lane do you want to be in? It really fits the niche of hobbies and interests and likes and all those kind of great things as well. And then we really get into this match of deep dive training alignment, and then obviously the assistance of on-ramping into the industry and supporting not only members and stakeholders, but looking at the manufacturing extension partners. Obviously the defense manufacturing communities, we're part of over a dozen of those, as well as small, medium manufacturers, right? Because a lot of these small, medium manufacturers, they may or may not even have HR, more or less talent development. So it's important that we're here as an available partner to help in that journey. So when we look at educational awareness, things like AM Jobs, we have the AM Jobs platform to introduce people to other people that work in the industry and understand what was their pathway to get to that career. What do they like? What are their hobbies and interests? Who do they work for? What do they do all day? Those kinds of things. You get a chance to meet someone that looks like them, that's taken their pathway, is very important. The inspiration bucket is key, right? The innovation of additive manufacturing, I think, is important. And where's it going? And focused on industrial application of AM, right? Because we all seen the little printed widgets, but how do we look at, oh, this part actually is for my car, or is on a plane, or is in a rocket shot to space? And so those industrial applications, and how, for example, if it was COVID relief, it's not just printing the mask, but printing the mold that can make thousands, hundreds of thousands of masks, and the importance of how additive can play a role in that. When we get into that kind of understanding and where is my lane and embarking on the journey, we have a whole series of micro learning, and it goes up from elementary and middle school into high schools and community colleges, mainstream adults, underserved populations, in regions that are typically have underrepresented groups. But it's getting out some rigor and content, but in a micro learning format, right? Trying to capture 10 minutes of learning at a time versus 8 weeks of learning at a time. And it's really just to help those individuals on ramp into those deep dive trainings and really become accustomed into those deep dive, competencies and those things. And so the deep dive training alignment is somewhere that, yes, we have trainings and we have a lot of those tools. We help build community college programs. We, do all these things. We're building some training assets for the Department of Defense. We do all of that to meet requirements. But the other part of it is linking all of that together. So a lot of work around competencies, specifically in job roles in the industry, so that we can start to align some of those. And so you heard from a couple of institutes yesterday, and obviously we work really close with MXD and Lauren and team there. And we even have a couple micro learning modules where they've contributed content on cybersecurity and those kind of things as well. So we do work together across some of these things. And so looking at competencies as a cross function across the technologies is important. And so we were launching an OSD Mantech funded effort called AM Train that says, hey, here's a defined job role, and here's the competencies to be proficient in that job role, and then linking that to where the training exists. So that match.com function of where would I find that? How do I get in touch with them? How do I take the training? So it's important to where is that stuff. And then we talk about this members and stakeholders. One example here is the Guide to 21st Century Talent. So working locally to build a guide of how do I recruit, how do I onboard, how do I build training programs, how do I build a strong culture, how do I ensure that as a company I have an inclusive work environment, those kinds of things. And so it's really making sure that we're supporting that whole pathway for those folks to on-ramp into. Just to give you an idea and a snapshot of who we engage with. So when I talk about, about 8,000 to 10,000 learners a year is what we engage in our portfolio, you can see that about half of that is incumbent and warfighters. And the other half of that, a little more than half of that is a large portion is K-12, right? So we want to work on that big funnel as well as our current workforce and our DoD workforce. But then that other kind of slice of the pie down there, the red and gray, that's our train the trainer activities, educate the educator activities. And so we focus a lot on that because that's an opportunity for us to scale programs locally. It's an opportunity for us to grow sustainably as well, and put those programs in the hands of local folks and try to lower those barriers of having maybe to pay for something or the cost that's included. So when we can scale those locally, it's important. And then this level of learning, and you'll see kind of that widened funnel approach. So we talk about the awareness gap being 10 times the skills gap, right? So you'll see that we have about half of our programs that focus on awareness and how to go out and find people to fill these great trainings that exist and those kind of things. And I'm sure, many people, it's the same thing, right? If you're struggling to find talent to apply to a job, the same thing is true. A lot of places are struggling to find individuals to come to training to train them to have the talent to apply to those jobs. And so we do work a lot on those programs, and then we kind of break the rest into concepts and skills as we kind of go down that route as well. You will see this kind of national footprint as well. So we do have training programs that have impacted all 49 states. I say all 49, we don't have any in Alaska, so we're still looking for some friends up there as well. But this map needs updated as of this week. So we're actually in 19 regions and growing. And these are regions where we have boots on the ground. So you'll see you know, all of those kind of, you know, bright AM Nation, as we call AM Nation, our national network of deployment partners. And so these aren't pinpoints on the map, rather they're clusters of activity that happen in these regions where we really can kind of scale and replicate and so forth as well. So that's a quick overview of America Makes and some of the work that we do in the education workforce development portfolio. Really looking forward to, you know, some discussion. Please consider us a partner. We've been a proud supporter of the work down there with the team thus far, with Brian and crew. Looking forward to engage more with you all as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and give back the presenter view, Brian.
Great, thank you, Josh. And just to echo what Josh said, we have had, just specifically at UAH, but certainly in AAMC, have a long relationship with NCDMM and America Makes, and appreciate their partnership, what they've done with us and in our region. We did have a question come in. Actually, it's around digital engineering, but it's for both of you. So I'm gonna hold that one till the Q&A at the end, and we'll pull that one back up. But I did have one question for you, Josh. From an industry perspective, and you mentioned this challenge of would versus should. So small manufacturer or a medium-sized manufacturer is thinking that they may benefit from additive manufacturing, but they don't have the skill set, obviously, within their organization, or even the technical knowledge to answer the question, where should we start? Does America Makes have something for that industry, and how could they go about taking advantage of that?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple different things. So when we think through this opportunity to take small bite-sized chunks, right? So we're actually launching a leadership series of the microlearning, right? It's just 4 microlearning modules. They're 10 minutes a piece, so it's an easy, like, hey, eat lunch with us for a week kind of thing. You can get them on your phone. You're picking up the kids at basketball practice or something, you know, like you're gonna wait 10 minutes anyway. So it's a great way to kind of learn just some of the basic understanding of how additive, what it is and what it isn't, how it's used, logistics, you know, issues, and just some of the hurdles and obstacles you may face, but then some of the big wins that you can have. And so those leadership modules are a step in that direction. We've also built an AM playbook that would help a small medium manufacturer go through that process and understand that a little bit. You know, think of that as more of a booklet. And then we also have opportunities like instructor-led training, half-day sessions, where we can help you know, teams think about their first idea and their first, you know, product, and work through the business case of that as well. So yeah, a number of opportunities through the Institute that you know are something very easy to us to bring to the region.
Great, thank you very much. And I guess if a company's interested in that, they would just contact go to your website.
Yeah, you see my email there as well. Absolutely, use me as a gateway to get to some of these things. But yeah, happy to support anyone that needs any of that stuff.
Great, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and hand it over to Lauren from MXD, and I'm gonna make you presenter. And Lauren is the Director of Workforce Collaborations at MXD Learn, the workforce development program of MXD, and she is responsible for cultivating relationships in academic institutions and nonprofit organizations, government, philanthropy, and industry to eliminate the skills gap specific to digital manufacturing and cybersecurity for manufacturing. Previously, Lauren was a program manager at MXD and oversaw MXD's contributions to the cybersecurity for manufacturing operational technology program, RI-Made Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program, and the Drexel Digital Design and Advanced Manufacturing Program, among others. Before joining MXD, Lauren worked for 10 years at the intersection of tech and nonprofit to solve complex problems using technologies like data aggregation, crowdfunding. And she holds a BA in political science from the University of Kansas. So welcome, Lauren, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction. And hello, everyone. Good morning and or afternoon to you all. So yeah, my role here at MXD is Director of Workforce Collaboration. So what I do is I try to find folks who are interested in pursuing and aligning on work. And I think that could apply potentially to many of you. So if you feel the same way, I'd love to be in touch after this presentation. So MXD is the Digital Manufacturing and Cybersecurity Institute. We weren't always both of those things. We initially started as just the Institute focusing on digital manufacturing. And we are the second institute. I don't want to give Josh a hard time. Some people at MXD think we were the first, but I'll take second. I think 2 is pretty good. So we initially were focusing on digital manufacturing, and as we were going through this, and 2014, 2015, 2016, we were finding that a lot of the folks that we were talking to about automating and digitizing their operations were also really concerned about cybersecurity attacks, and for good reason. In the last 2 years, manufacturing is the #1 industry target for cyber attacks. It's the hackers know that as soon as folks are digitizing, they're becoming vulnerable, and the vulnerability risks are huge right now. Someone can hold up your entire operations if you have digitized, and they can hack into your systems to slow the assembly line. And that can cost you an unimaginable amount of money, and they know that, so they can, hold you ransom basically before your operations get back online. So as we were speaking with folks and digitizing their operations, it felt only natural for us to also talk to them about securing those digital operations. And we have been working across the ecosystem, and I think this will be very similar to what you're seeing with ADAMC and even America Makes. We see ourselves as conveners. We don't want to work in a silo. We want to incorporate lots and lots of perspectives here. So we're working with federal government, DoD. We are a DoD-funded institute. And we're working with local, regional, and state governments as well to find the best solutions. We're working with manufacturers. Our member pool is massive. We work with folks, who are on a smaller scale, 10 employees, just a few employees, and all the way up to members like Boeing, and even Google or Betacom, lots of those kind of larger solution providers or manufacturers that you've heard of. Solution providers, as you can see, is also one of the main groups that we try to work with and convene. In addition, our workforce development team and our project management office works really closely with academia across the country. And with workforce development, we start at K through 12. We want to start speaking to folks early and talking about manufacturing, talking about how it's really not a dark, dirty, dangerous environment. I think especially addressing the parents of students has been really important to help them understand the incredible work opportunities and the incredible career and life-sustaining job opportunities there are in manufacturing right now. And once you get the parents on board, they're more willing to send their kids to a training in manufacturing, right? They aren't thinking of it as a scary thing anymore. And finally, we work very, very closely with nonprofits and community-based organizations in Chicago, but all across the country. We're based in Chicago, but we work with folks all across the country. And at large, and I think this mimics very much the rest of the institutes as well, because it's part of our charter, but we convene stakeholders. So we're working across all of the ecosystem to try to bring folks together to talk about what's necessary, what's essential to the future of manufacturing. We work to advance technology. We have a great team of technical folks on board that really work to push the envelope about what's possible. And we empower workforce. So we want to give workforce the tools and the trainings necessary to advance within the manufacturing workforce. But we also want to help be their voice to the manufacturers as well. So we don't only represent manufacturers, we also want to empower workforce to share what their needs are. What do individuals need? What are they seeking when they go to work at a manufacturer? And how can we help bridge that gap? So we talk a lot about numbers, of course, and the two numbers that I am often talking about almost on a daily basis is the expectation that by 2030, there will be 2.1 million unfilled jobs in manufacturing. It is an unimaginable number that all the institutes are trying to solve. But that one for us is a huge focus. And we know that you have to attack that problem set with many, many different strategies. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. The other one is that 75% of US manufacturers are small manufacturers. They employ fewer than 20 people. And so how can we specifically speak to the incredible number of folks working at small manufacturers who are really the foundation of the manufacturing ecosystem and the economy? So those are the two things we're always kind of going through our operations and thinking about. So specifically MXD Learn, which is the workforce development arm of MXD. You'll have to excuse me, I'm recovering from a bit of a cold, so I hope I don't hack up a lung here. Apologies in advance. Our work is led by industry. So when we go to train individuals, we want to be sure that the jobs that they are training for are jobs that are being hired for by manufacturers. So we always start there. What do manufacturers need? What roles are they going to be hiring for in the next 5 years and right now? And how can we make sure that we are giving individuals those particular skills for those particular roles? But we don't want to be siloed in industry. We want to ensure that communities, we can bridge the gap between communities and the manufacturers. We want the individuals to know what roles are going to be hired for so that they can pursue those roles and seek training specifically for those roles. And like I mentioned earlier, we start as early as K through 12. We had a group of 300 students just last week, ages or grades 6 through 12, in our kind of running through our factory floor and in our office to see kind of what we were all about. We want them to be able to go back to their parents and say, wow, it was so cool. The factory environment was clean. It was beautiful. Everything was organized. It was almost like a lab, it's just that exciting. So we start there. Well, we start in industry, and then when we come to community, we want to tell them industry looks different than what you think it looks like. And then finally, we want to ensure that we're focused on the underengaged. That 2.1 million number is not going to be filled by the existing groups that have been filling manufacturing gap over the last several decades. We really need to bring in many new communities. We need to look across rural, urban, suburban areas. We need to speak to folks with accessibility needs that haven't traditionally been engaged. Yes, for sure, we need to speak to women, to people of color, and really look at the areas regionally that also haven't been highly engaged in manufacturing as well. And our approach to each particular training, and I'll say too, while MXD at large is primarily funded under the Department of Defense, MXD Learn really relies on grant funding and specialized project-specific funding. And so a lot of our work is focused around a particular initiative, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I give examples of our programs. And some of the work that we do when we approach a grant is say, okay, how do we define what the future of work is? What do manufacturers need? We don't want to just be throwing out trainings and just hoping that it's solving the problem. We need to have a base level understanding and foundation of knowledge around what problems need to be solved and how they can be solved. So we've done that. A couple examples are our jobs taxonomy, which we published, I believe in 2019, and then our cybersecurity hiring guide. So those are two really, really wonderful resources. I encourage all of you to go onto our website to seek those out, and I can share a link also in the chat if needed. They essentially outline the roles of the future, what the skills are required, the types of people that could be really great at filling those roles, what certifications might be required for those roles. So if you don't have an HR team, completely understand, and you need to have an understanding of, you have an idea in mind of what skills you need to hire for, what that job might be, we might have it already listed out, and you can see, here are the skills you need to ask for when you post a job posting for that. But we start with identifying that piece, and then we go in to develop the trainings. So if we're gonna hire an AI and machine learning engineer, what skills do they need for that? And then we go and we meet up with academic partners, sometimes our own curriculum developers, and we tell them, how do we create a training that addresses these skills and these needs? And then finally, we implement the trainings, we do the actual training programs. And we really try to find opportunities for specifically that hands-on learning as well. So a few of the programs I'll run through. Our CIMOT program, it stands for Cybersecurity for Manufacturing Operating Technology, is a partnership with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where over the course of several years, we took the cybersecurity hiring guide that I previously mentioned. We identified 3 of the roles that were mentioned and targeted within that hiring guide. And we did exactly what I mentioned. We met with the academics. We said, here are the roles. Here's what are expected of these roles. How do we take a person who doesn't have experience in that and upskill them or train them to fill that particular role? So they created 3 sets of curriculum and 3 programs. Each of these different programs you see here, manufacturing cyber systems operator, AI ML engineer, and advanced cyber analyst, excuse me, they have the 3 courses. Each course is 20 hours long, so a total of a 60-hour course. We do an initial iteration of that program with live synchronous learning with students across the country, primarily folks from manufacturers. And these were free programs as they were live. And then after they are completed synchronously, we are then recording them and uploading them to our virtual training center for asynchronous use in the future by anybody who is interested. Currently, we have our manufacturing cyber systems operator course on our virtual training center. We are in the process of putting the AI and ML engineer onto our virtual training center, and then followed soon by the advanced cyber analyst program as well. And this program was really interesting. It was funded, across in several different ways. So some of this funding came from the OLDCC. Some of this funding came from a private philanthropy from the Siemens Foundation. And so we really try to figure out how we can, create a collaborative interest in these important programs, not only from government funders, but also from private funders as well. Our MXD Learn Capital program is a relatively new program that launched this past spring. It is a $6.2 million program from congressional appropriations. We're very, very excited about it. It essentially takes the work that we had done with SIMOT and using the jobs taxonomy and the hiring guide as a foundation, and it identifies 5 more roles that we will focus on and that we will then record and port onto our virtual training center. The recordings are of the trainings, of course, and so we want to be looking at what are the trainings to get folks into these roles. How can we make sure that folks have access to these, which is often why we are putting these online, because we want them to be accessible across the country and by folks who maybe even have childcare needs or accessibility needs. We want to ensure that they can everybody can access these. And then we look at how can we take the folks who have gone through these trainings and connect them with roles. And so we're kind of working through this program right now. Another program that I really, really, really love, and it's just getting starting, is the Manufacturing Workplace Accessibility and Job Training Program. So I spoke a little bit earlier about not only addressing the needs of the industry, right? Manufacturers who need more people. We need more folks on board. We need workers in order to get our work done. We also want to look at what the individual's needs are. And Josh had mentioned earlier, this idea of like filling the bucket, but there's a hole in the bucket. And so while we're constantly training and folks are leaving the workforce, and also we're constantly having more and more roles that we need to add into the workforce, and specifically around some of these really new technologies like AI. We want to make sure that the folks are being retained. Once we get folks trained up and put into the workforce, we do not want them to leave. We need them to stay. And so what can we do to help manufacturers ensure that they are retaining the folks that are being sent to them by all of our institutes? And one of the ways we're doing this is with this accessibility job training program, which is where we're not only training individuals with accessibility needs to do manufacturing jobs, but we're also going to the manufacturers themselves and saying, here's how you can create a workstation that is accessible to someone in a wheelchair. Or here is how you can work with folks who are neurodivergent and have different needs than maybe other workers you're working with. And here's how amazing they can be at their job. And so I'm really loving that program as well. I see we're getting a little short on time, so I'm going to zoom through a few more slides here. Our virtual training center, I've spoken about several times before. Our goal here is every single training we do. This just launched about a year ago, but every single training we do, we want to record and get onto that platform for folks to access. It currently has a library of over 1,000 free and paid courses that folks can access. I would encourage you to go on and have a look there. It's an open edX-based virtual platform. If any of you have any specific needs or things that you would love to see on there, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. And I want to talk a little bit more outside of just workforce about how MXD is supporting industry. Another great virtual tool that you all can access is our cyber marketplace. Our cybersecurity team, with the upcoming expectation around CMMC requirements, has created an incredible online self-assessment platform that you all can use. You can get on. Your first assessment is free. If you need to conduct a CMMC level 1, level 2 assessment, hop on there, have a look. You can get access to one for free, run it. After the first one, there is a license requirement. But if it seems like something you all might be interested in, especially with any CMMC requirements coming up here soon, please pop on there and have a look. Another thing our team has been doing this year, which has been received really, really well, and we're hoping to grow the program, is a digital kit program, where we're looking at folks who don't have any automation or any digitization on their factory floor, and talk about how they can, and give them a kit that basically allows them to go and implement that on their own. One of the ways we do this is with our our vision retrofit kit. So you can see here, there's an analog source. There is a very simple, cheap camera, like a webcam, pointed at that analog source. And then it recognizes, right, this dial where it is to check, like if the temperature goes above 80, there will be an alarm. This is a really cheap way to implement a digital solution. And so if you have any interest in something like this or the next one I'm about to talk to, please reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with our team who's implementing these. I will say that these digital kits are free. We are doing this for our small and medium manufacturers. And so we want to provide as much support as we can, and we want to make it accessible to everyone. So the next one is another option that another kit option that we're providing. Again, if you have a look at this and this seems like something you might want access to, let me know. We are providing the hardware and software. We are providing the initial, install and operations to get you set up. And then, as you say, like we are flying places to do this. We're really putting a lot of effort here to ensure that these tools are accessible to everyone. Okay, so I blazed through the end there, I know. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about it, but I will go ahead and release my screen.
Great, thank you, Lauren, appreciate that. Actually, we had a question come in about disabled population right before you touched on that. So I think that
Oh, really?
addressed, yeah, it was kind of interesting. Another question that came in for, and I don't know what screen is going to show up here. There we go. Another question that came in early on was around, and this is for you or Josh, but it was around digital engineering. Are the MIs embracing the challenge of adopting digital engineering practices, including industry 5.0 and 6.0 technologies? I think there's a lot of challenges with 4.0, but do you guys have maybe a response to around digital engineering and industry 5.0 and 6.0 technologies?
Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll be honest. I am not the most technical person on our team, but I do know that these are things that our team is constantly talking about. What are the technologies that are available right now? What are the technologies that we think will be available in the next 10 years? And how can we help prepare to support small and medium manufacturers? I mean, and we all know from the workforce side, Josh, I know you know, the technology is moving so quickly that as soon as someone is trained, it's like they're already behind on what they need to know. And so it is very important for us to stay updated on those things generally, I will say.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Lauren, I mean, we have some work in that space, right? Obviously, additive is a digital manufacturing, platform as it is, right? So we have some work in that. We have some, work in the sphere. I talked a little bit about some of the microlearning work that we've collaborated with MXD on, right? Anytime we start to bridge up against kind of that enabler to the enabling technology, we're pulling on our friends that have some of that expertise. I think, some of it though, and Brian, to your point, which is the struggle even of Industry 4.0, is we're always looking at where our mass need is. So it's mass and criticality, right? So where do we need the most people we can't find? And then where do we need the niche critical job roles we can't fill that stop us from adopting. And so we want to tackle both of those, but also trying to, be very cautious of shiny object syndrome, which is like, oh, and you can imagine with additive, we get all the time with a new material or maybe a new process or a new piece of equipment or whatever that may be. And it's like, oh, we need training on that. And I'm like, well, do we need to train 10 people or do we need to train 100 or do we need 10,000? Those are different things, and it's different kind of assets that we need to move on. And so we do look at the difference between, awareness, knowledge, and skill set. So there are some things where we will build an asset that specifically is just targeting awareness of those things, certain things that are maybe building knowledge, and then other things that build a skill set of, yes, I can use it, I deploy it, I understand limitations and all that kind of things that go with some of these deployments as well. So yeah, it's a lot there, but yeah, there absolutely some work going on in that space.
Great. Thank you both. I know we've got up to the top of the hour. I want to be, I guess, judicious with people's time. Sorry. So thanks to our panelists, Josh and Lauren. Appreciate your time today. Thank you those who attended, not just for attending, but for your involvement in the advanced manufacturing industrial base, specifically the manufacturing industrial base related to national security. Appreciate everyone's role in that, in addressing this very laid out, but very big, very well laid out, but very big challenge that we have in our nation. We do want to hear from those who attended. So as you drop off or as the webinar ends, you'll get a very short, easy, and quick survey. If we'd appreciate your feedback. You'll also get one in email as well. So thanks to Josh and Lauren, and thanks to everyone attended. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.